Okay, completing the square intro and completing the square intermediate. These are nice when you have tiles. Now I realize at home, well, you have tiles at home, you have the ebook. So I'm going to draw some of these, but if it helps to pull those tiles out on the ebook, if you go to the ebook and then just go to the bottom and click on tools, the algebra tiles are what you're looking for. So for the intro, you're just figuring out what's going to make this a square. So, gosh, I really want to do some of these with tiles. For the first example, it says x squared plus 10x. If I was building this with tiles, I would have an x squared tile here. Let's forget about this. And I would have 5x tiles here, 5x tiles here. If I'm building a square, I would split them up. And then what it's asking is how many little unit tiles do you need to make a square? Now, if this isn't cutting it for you, use the virtual tiles to visualize this picture. So we would need, you've probably figured out by now, 5 times 5, 25 unit tiles to make it a square. So that's all you're doing on this, is figuring out how many unit tiles are going to make this a square. The next one is x squared minus 8x. So in this case, you have, if you were building this, it would look like this. You'd have an x squared tile here, and you'd have 4 x tiles, but they would be negative. And the way we did that with our tiles was we made them red. And if you just double click on the tile, or maybe it's a single click, it turns it from blue to red. So then how many unit tiles would you need to make this a square? It would still be a positive value. You would add 16 to make it a square. And what you're doing is you're creating perfect square trinomials. This is a perfect square trinomial. This factors into x minus 5 times x minus 5, because remember the short side of this tile is 1. Oh, this is positive. The long side is x, so this is x plus 5 times x plus 5. This is x minus 4 times x minus 4. What you're doing is you're setting it up to make it easier to factor. Now, I know completing the square intermediate gets very, a lot of you have said it's confusing, and it can be a little confusing, but if you write it out, it's not that bad. So I'm looking at an example here for completing the square. I have x squared plus 6x. So what I'm going to do is say to myself, let me move this 78 over, and I'm going to make a perfect square. Well, to make x squared plus 6x a perfect square, I'm going to have to add 9. So I'm going to add 9. But you can't just add 9 to an equation. You have to keep your equation balanced. So the way we did this in class is we moved this term over to the other side. If we added 9 to the right, we added 9 to the left. The example that I'm looking at has a blank on this side of the equation. So I'm actually not going to do anything with the left side. I'm only going to add 9 here, and then I'm going to subtract it so that I don't change what I started with. So that means I can easily factor x squared plus 6x plus 9. That factors into x plus 3 times x plus 3, so x plus 3 squared. And I just have these extra tiles, so I'm just going to combine them. So that would be negative 80. Let me see if I can get an example where the blank is on the other side. Okay, here's one. And by the way, I have helped people with this, and they've given you perfect square trinomials, in which case you don't have to make a square. It's already a square. Okay, so the way I'm going to do this, the blank is on this side of the equation. It's not on the same side as the perfect square trinomial, or the one that I'm going to create. So I'm going to move this 7 over to the right side and leave a little space. Then I'm going to complete the square. X squared minus 8x, so I would have negative 4x here and negative 4x here. I would have to add 16. I just did this example a second ago. I would add 16 to make it a square. So if I add 16 to the left, I've got to add 16 to the right, so that I'm not changing the original problem that I started with. So this is going to factor into x minus 4 squared. This is x minus 4 squared, factored out, and then negative 7 plus 16 would be 9.